may wonder why I'm showing pictures of New York at the beginning of a film about the Queen. Well, I happened to be there in February 1952, when King George VI died. And the way the people of this most thrilling, but also toughest of cities, took the news was an experience which I feel ought to be put on record. It was deeply touching to see the stars and stripes at half-mast on every building, and to find memorial services being held in all the churches. Americans were saluting one whom they recognized as both a good man and a good king. One felt that they realized, too, that by never sparing himself, he literally gave his life for the people at whose head he stood. I sat brooding over all this as I watched the skaters in Central Park. Such a very American scene. It struck me how much the late King's life had been overshadowed by war, its prelude, its conflict, its aftermath. My mind went back to the V-days of 1945, when Britons could walk the streets of London without fear for the first time in nearly 6 years. Those were moments when the people, gathering outside Buckingham Palace, turned to the King as personifying the nation. The shadow of Westminster Abbey, where the sovereign is crowned and where Britain's greatest sons are buried, falls on the garden of remembrance which hallows the dead of 2 world wars. Every year at the cenotaph in Whitehall, the King went as an ex-serviceman amongst ex-servicemen to pay tribute to fallen comrades. The opening of the Olympic Games of 1948 in London showed the King helping to restore international harmony and goodwill. It was no fault of the King's if, when he opened the Festival of Britain in 1951, one of his last public acts, real peace seemed as far off as ever. The death of King George VI brought a sense of personal loss. It could be said of him, as Motley wrote of William the Silent, "As long as he lived, he was the guiding star of a brave nation, and when he died, the little children cried in the streets." Here they are, the men and women who make up the great body of the British community, waiting for hours in a queue over a mile long, in bitter winter weather, to pay their last respects at the lying-in state in Westminster Hall. Hundreds of thousands filed silently past the bier, watched over by sentries of the household troops and bodyguards. Vast crowds gathered to watch the funeral procession as it slowly wended its way through the streets of London from Westminster to Paddington Station, whence the coffin was carried by train to Windsor for burial. At Windsor, the last rites took place at St. George's Chapel within the castle precincts. The lawns are covered with wreaths sent by individuals, societies, regiments, and so on from all over the Commonwealth. So the King is laid to rest.